Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons because I always do talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about the Mythic Odysseys of Theros. Why is Mythic Odysseys of Theros awesome? And I frankly think that it is an awesome book for many different reasons, but I'm going to highlight them. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. I'm just going to skim past these aspects as quickly as I can in essentially the space of about 4 pages, which doesn't sound like skimming, I know, but I'm doing the best I can in terms of making things a bit more streamlined. So this is a Magic the Gathering world. It has the players' characters being champions of the gods, and what I would essentially say is a modified version of Greek mythology, okay, of Athens. Essentially, that particular world has been duplicated by Wizards of the Coast through Magic the Gathering. They might have changed a few things, but essentially it's the same sort of world with cosmetic changes. This book has a range of player options, but I would say it is still probably more for the Dungeon Master than a player. That doesn't mean there isn't some really good stuff here, because there absolutely is stuff worthwhile picking up as a player. I would consider this almost a complete guide, a complete Dungeon Master toolbox for Theros. Okay, if you wanted to run a Greek-themed campaign and you didn't want to build it all yourself, this would be the perfect tool, and I have considered it many times myself, so therefore I think it's brilliant, and it's probably going to be the next thing I run at some point. I don't know when that'll be, but at some point. So the supernatural gifts. There are a bunch of supernatural gifts that you get. These are extra character features. They're not always combat focused, which I'm quite pleased about. What I did notice is that the Anvil Wrought is probably going to stand out as being the strongest option in terms of the supernatural gifts. Now, the problem with giving players more stuff when they've already got Dungeons and Dragons 5e, which is very, very hard sort of challenge a player as it is, and their characters, giving them more, you need to have more tools for the Dungeon Master to counter that, to make it a bit more exciting. Otherwise, everything's going to be a cakewalk. One of the things you'll notice as I walk you through this book is there isn't a lot of tools for the Dungeon Master to counter some of these supernatural gifts. That's a problem, but we'll discuss it more. The athlete background makes sense. It's definitely duplicating the Greek mythological hero, because Greek mythology always sort of focused on the hero being very physically skilled or physically endowed in some way. There was always that aspect to them. So the background, the athlete, now I know some people will say, well, why isn't there more? Well, actually, I don't think there needed to be more. There is actually plenty of other backgrounds and other supplements, so you didn't really need to duplicate it here. There's a very narrow range of races available with the Centaur, the Leonin, which I kind of like a lot, the Minotaur, the Satyr, the Triton, and humans. But except for the human, almost all of them are highly exotic races. They're definitely not your run-of-the-mill humanoid. So I actually think that's a good thing. That doesn't stop you from adding in additional races if you wanted to, but the world of Theros has a very limited range of different races within it. For whatever reason, I don't know. Subclasses. There are 2 subclasses in this book, and I would say these subclasses fit the campaign setting very well. There is the Bard, the College of Eloquence, which I understand to be a very good subclass, very capable of doing a lot of powerful and useful things in your game, which is great. Then you have the Paladin, the Oath of Glory. Makes a lot of sense. I haven't heard such great things about the Oath of Glory. I think a few people consider it underwhelming. But look, not everything needs to be better than what's in the player's handbook. Frankly, I'm not looking for that in my game anyway. There are basic adventure creation tools. in a specific chapter. There's actually a chapter on creating adventures in a very much a god-focused, heroic world of Theros. But it also has a whole lot of adventure creation ideas and tools scattered throughout the book. Now that's one of the things that's a little bit annoying, because as long as you have an index and that's indexed, you could probably find all of that. Now we'll get back to the index in a second. But that still gives you the tools that you need. They're just not exactly all in one place. Now I had to think about whether they could actually do that without duplicating the same material over and over again. And was the stuff they were giving you, where they gave it to you, appropriate? And I would have to say, generally I would say yes, they probably have put things in the right place. So I'm not going to give them a hard time about that at all. Okay, so the Theros world, the lore behind Theros, is bare bones. It's a bare bones summary. But is that all I need? Probably that's all I'm going to need. It does include a world map, which I understand this is the first time that Theros has ever had a world map, and it's in this book. So that's a really good thing. And I would have been really upset if there wasn't a world map. In fact, that would have been enough to sort of turn me off pretty much completely. But there is a world map. It's a pretty good one. The god piety system is mechanically clear and simple. It is a good way of measuring a champion's loyalty to their god. But there's a problem that I can see with this. I would imagine that dungeon masters will struggle applying the system, as it will require additional tracking, and it will also likely create party conflicts, because you could wind up earning loyalty, because that does explain how you lose piety and gain piety. Piety points are accumulated as you adventure based on what your characters are doing. But they could be working against each other if they are with or in line or allied with a god that doesn't like another god. That's entirely possible. Now, for those of you who already are familiar with inspiration, inspiration's hard to track because you have to keep a track of every character flaw, and you're looking for the players to, play their character to their flaw so you can award them inspiration as stated in the player's handbook, unless, of course, you're using a different system. This is going to require even more tracking and more control, and a dungeon master being able to pick out the important points more often than even that system. So there I see a problem with that. Now, does that mean that's the end of it? No, because those people who wanted the mechanical system get one. They get it. It's there. I personally am fine with just making a narrative for the characters. Whatever the players are playing in their game, it's not a big problem for me. I will just use a narrative rather than a mechanical system. But there are also benefits to using the piety system, okay? The higher your piety, the better your character can do things. Now, not all of these things that they get to do are combat related. Thank God for that. No pun intended. Anyway, so that's a good thing too. Right, the god lore. So the gods have a whole lot of lore. It's very appealing as far as I can see. It is heavily copying what you get from Greek mythology. In fact, I think that's a positive development. Now, I know a few people will say, no, it's not copying, it's inspired. Yeah, semantics, you're beating around the bush, it's a copy. What they've done is they've taken the view or the image of a Greek god. They may have changed it a little bit. And then whatever the Greek god's nature was, they might have shifted it over to a different image. Okay, they just swapped things around. That's all it is. But what I see is Greek mythology, just with different window dressing and maybe switching around their personality and how they function in the world. That's it. I don't have a problem with that. I'm fine with that. That's all cool. The inclusion of many different locations with labelled maps. Yes, they are labelled. They have quest ideas. They have possible villains that you could populate the area with. They have monsters they would recommend for that area as well. I think that's awesome. I think that is exactly the sort of thing I would be looking for. And if it wasn't there, I would have to create that. Now, those tools, now they're very small tools. Those charts aren't great in terms of, like, it's not like there's 20 options. No, usually you get anywhere from 4 to 6 options, and then you just sort of pick what you want to fit what you plan to create. The only thing that I would say is missing from the locations area is, or the locations they provide you, and there's a bunch of them, there's many of them. There's one almost associated with every god in Theros, as far as I can tell. That is, they miss out the area details. So information on the specific area itself in detail is not there, and there's no read aloud text. So you have to create your own read aloud text, and you have to flesh out the area yourself, which is fine. I think most dungeon masters will want to do that anyway, just because I want to homebrew it as much as possible. And I see this setting as definitely being something you would want to homebrew as often as possible. There is an adventure included in the book. There is an adventure for level 1. Okay, it's not it's not long or anything like that. I would say, from what I have read through of it, is it's average quality for a Wizards of the Coast product, in my opinion. I would not say that it stands out. Yes, there is a Minotaur in there. There are some monsters that are iconic to Greek mythology, so therefore they tie nicely to Theros. But it is average in quality as far as I can tell. That means you don't get a complete wall of text and find it too difficult to find stuff. It is laid out all rightish. It's not the best, but look, average is better than bad, isn't it? Okay, let's talk about magic items. There's actually very few magic items in the book, unfortunately. There are 3 items that stand out for me, and none of the items that stand out for me are artifacts. Now, the artifacts are fine and dandy because they almost look like they've been pulled out of Greek mythology completely. But there are 3 items that I thought were really good, and that is the flying chariot, the siren song lyre, and basically you get a molten bronze skin. These are really quite unique. Okay, these are the sorts of things we would want to have a flying chariot. I would never have even thought of having a magic item which was molten bronze skin that you could put on like armor. That's a really cool idea. I love that. Okay, so let's have a quick chat about the artifacts, because there are a couple of them. The artifacts are very clever. Okay, they have relevant abilities based on the legendary Greek weapons they're based on. Okay, and they are definitely based on legendary Greek weapons, and they do have related abilities. Some of them are combat focused and some of them are not. What I like about them the most, though, is they have a random feature built into them to make each character individualized for the players. So that means that no artifact that a player's character picks up is likely to be exactly the same in anybody's game. They're always going to be slightly different. And of course, as the Dungeon Master, you don't have to roll on a chart. You could not make it random, and you could pick them if you would prefer to do that. And of course, all Dungeon Masters have the prerogative to do something like that. It makes a lot of sense. The monsters and beasts are Greek myth themed, which is fine. This is what we're expecting in this setting. In fact, if they weren't there, I would put them in there. So that's not a problem. The only problem I would say is, like almost all Wizards of the Coast products, is there is going to be some trouble getting it to be challenging for players, because you are essentially using a bunch of the monsters that exist in the monster manual for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and those monsters are antiques now. Dungeons & Dragons 5e has been out for a while. The game has changed so much. The players have so many additional things available, whether that be spells, class features, feats, races, you name it, and then Tasha's comes into play. So none of those monsters have a hope of being even remotely interesting in your game in terms of a fight. Now, if they're not a fight, it won't be an issue. But if there is a battle taking place, you're going to have to do a lot of retooling, because the monsters they give you are from the monster manual, and they do give you some monster stat blocks as well. All of the monster stat blocks that I looked at need adjustment. Like pretty much every single Wizards of the Coast creation, to make them challenging for your players' characters now, they tend to make supplements, and when they have monsters in them, they're usually more powerful than, or stronger or nastier than the stuff you find in the monster manual nowadays. But Theros has been out for a while, and then Tash has been released after that, so that's going to change everything. And I can assure you, you're going to want to make adjustments to that. I'm not going to explain how to adjust those monsters. I've talked about that sort of thing before. That could be another topic at a later date. The thing that is definitely on everybody's mind in this is there is the mythic monsters. Okay, the mythic monsters are few in number. There's only 3 as far as I can tell, but they're pretty good. I would say the standout one is the Spider Queen. Okay, what's her name? Is it Astra? Astra? I think it's Astra, something like that. Okay, Spider Queen. It's really disgusting as a monster. Now, you have your usual Kraken-like creature. The title suggests that we would get like a mythic Hydra, but we don't get a mythic Hydra. There's no tools for showing you how to build a mythic creature. There's no tools as far as I can tell. But I would like to point out to you, for those of you who are upset by that, all you're going to do is double the monster's hit points. That's essentially all you're doing. There's 2 things you got to do. You're going to make sure that when it falls to 0 hit points, it goes back to its maximum hit points again and continues the fight in a different form. And you decide what that form might be. And you're going to create some new legendary actions that it will use the second time round. And that's it. So making a mythic monster is actually super simple. It doesn't require an enormous amount of work on your part, even though they haven't provided you with specific tools to do that. Okay, now even with all of this, if Wizards of the Coast had presented this book to me and I had seen it, I would probably not be wanting to pick it up unless it had some very important things. A good contents page, an appendix if it required an appendix, which it does. It has an appendix where the monsters are and the magic items are and stuff like that, so that's good. And most important, and Wizards of the Coast are notorious for leaving this particular feature out of any kind of reference book they make, and that is an index. And guess what? I'm amazed. Amazing, there's an index in this Wizards of the Coast book. Mythic Odysseys of Theros has an index. So Wizards of the Coast, well done. I'm very impressed. And that has sold me. That index makes life so much easier to find all this stuff. Now the book isn't badly laid out, but an index is still vital for finding things quickly when you haven't got it, I don't know, you haven't got a little note tacked onto the page, or you haven't written down everything and gone through with a fine-tooth comb. So indexes, hugely useful. Okay, what player doesn't want to try their hand at being a champion of the gods? There's a lot here for players. Now, there is a lot of reprinted material in here, okay? There's a lot of stuff that is already in other books. I understand that, okay? But if you don't have that material already, there is a lot worth getting a hold of. Even the lore for a player around the gods is useful, because that gives them such a great wealth of information to figure out how to build their character, even if it's not mechanical in nature. Even if you don't use any of the races in the book, or any of the subclasses in the book, or you decide you're not going to wind up using supernatural gifts, or anything like that. Just that section, and it's quite a large section as it happens, is super useful for players and dungeon masters. And I am so pleased they have done that, because that makes a big difference in terms of my decision about this book. Now, dungeon masters are provided with Greek mythology based world, basically. If you wanted to run a Greek mythology world and you wanted to sort of tailor it a little bit and change it up a bit, this does it, okay? You're given pretty much all the tools you need. And that's what I like about it. I like the fact that there's pretty much everything that I need, and anything else I need to do, I don't need Wizards of the Coast to show me how to do that with what they've given me. So therefore, I'm so pleased that I purchased the book. And yes, I do recommend it to somebody considering buying the book. And if you've already got the book, fantastic, because this will definitely be the next campaign I run. Now, if you found this useful, fantastic. I hope that it was useful to you in some way. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing video content like this, you can through Patreon, the Amazon affiliate links down in the description, the merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos. You know, the standard YouTube stuff, right? Or just watch my videos. That's always good. That works for me. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit that bell button until it goes ding, ding, ding. And share the video. That's always useful. Sharing the video is great. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.